What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about something that I know I definitely suffer from, and that's the mental load of the back pocket plan. So it could be a plan B, it could be hypervigilance, it could be always having the worst case scenario in mind, and just what happens to you mentally and physically by always carrying that with you.
Really thinking about that, like, if it's a heavy load, you're always planning and always figuring out worst case scenarios. It can take a mental toll on you after a while.
You know, it gets so bad for me that there have been many times where I will study knots.
Like tying knots?
Yeah, well, untying knots.
Oh.
Like getting yourself out of, like there's a knot, for example. Let's say that your wrists were tied and bound by a string or a rope or something, and you were attached to something else. There's a knot that you could do to be able to untie yourself from that without actually untying the knots themselves.
I've never even... That's something that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like the way that you position your wrist. You can YouTube it.
Oh, wow.
So I think that for me, too, there are a lot of times where I'm going to use Las Vegas as an example because this is the time that comes to mind for me where like I get so exhausted just from my hypervigilance, like constantly scanning, constantly looking at like entrances and the what if scenarios of like where one would go if need be. And sometimes it's not like Vegas that makes me tired. It's what I'm bringing to Vegas.
Yeah, and for me, like I'm very analytical on a lot of that stuff, and I'm not thinking of the worst case scenarios all the time, but I'm a reactionary type person. Like even dealing with stuff in being in law enforcement, like because you never can plan for all the circumstances, but you can quickly run through those scenarios in your head to be able to say, okay, here's an exit route. Here's what I would do if this situation comes up. But it could be really mentally and physically draining the more and more you think about that if it's a constant thing.
So there are some signs that might mean that you're carrying too much mental weight. As I go through these, Clint, you're probably going to be like, yep, she does that. That's her. And the first one is that you really can't relax in public spaces. But for me, it's not only public spaces. So it could be things like, of course, we know that a lot of officers like to sit facing the doors. It could be scanning exits. It could be mentally rehearsing any kind of responses to threats. But something that I notice is that even when I'm at family gatherings, this still exists for me.
Yeah, there's always, because you never know when and if something could happen. It is good to prepare for those circumstances mentally to where your body and you're physically going to react in that situation to be able to have a plan for it and be able to go to a hiding spot, okay, this is what I'm going to do fighting wise, or this is where I'm going to run to.
The next one that I have on here is that you might struggle with spontaneous changes. So I know for me that any kind of last minute changes in my plans, it could cause a little bit of agitation because I hadn't mentally prepared for it.
Yeah. If your plans don't hold true to what they are, especially in situations that you've really laid out your plans of, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. This is XYZ at this time. This is going to happen. And then when you get that curveball, it's frustrating. Not only just like, why didn't it work out the way I wanted it to, but it makes it harder to adapt everything else to it.
This is a big one for me, and it's overthinking smallest tasks. And something as simple as going to the store might feel like a tactical op. I know for me, from the moment that I get into my vehicle and I pull off of our street, that's when it begins. So I'm constantly scanning the road. I'm constantly scanning other drivers. Where we live, it's in the middle of nowhere. And you'll see like bullet holes on stop signs and street signs. And that's kind of where it begins for me. And of course, getting out of my vehicle, walking into a store, having to pump my own gas, something something really big that comes to me is standing in line at a grocery store. And, when we're checking out, usually you're paying and I'm just like standing there scanning constantly.
Yeah. And it's being able to, especially in those are like the choke points that you don't really think of. If you don't have that mindset, you're not thinking of the choke point that you're kind of stuck in that position. If you're standing in line, you're kind of funneled down the checkout line, and there's really not as many places as you could go as if you're in the store looking around, or if you're walking to your vehicle, something like that.
Something that I didn't put on this list that just came up is avoidance. So for me, there are many times where I'll avoid like public events or just public gatherings. Like even if it's family gatherings, like there are many times where like for this specific reason, I would just rather opt out.
Yeah, well, because it's a big mental drain, and having to mentally go through that every time you go out, it is a burden in a way to where it's draining. It's physically and mentally draining to where because you never know. There's so many what ifs, and there's, you can't plan for everything all the time.
Yeah. And when your hypervigilance is on like that constantly, I feel like there's this wall that's created around what's going on with you mentally in terms of preparation and worst case scenario prep, that in the moment like that, it's very difficult for you to be able to let your guard down so much to the extent that you can allow emotions to be enjoyed. So family gatherings, I'm going to bring that one up again. And, Clint, I know that you know this, but I know for me, I'm a lot more present with the what ifs than I am with my own family in those instances.
Yeah. And like, it's almost it's that burden that you hold on it, and it's being able to, because you're almost feeling so detached because you're focusing on all those what ifs.
Yeah, there are ways that we can kind of lighten this a little bit. And I know it's something that is very trying that I constantly work on, but kind of limiting that tactical thinking into tactical setting. So for officers, maybe when you're off duty, you constantly have this consciousness where you shift into home mode, and it's okay to be aware, but you don't have to be hyper alert in that setting.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like for me, is I know the biggest thing for me is I trust my experience. I trust my responses to these high end type situations to be able to say, okay, I know it's a switch that I could flip, that I turn on, and I can tactically and soundly address it if I needed to.
Yeah, and something else is to learn to build your trust in others. So you don't necessarily have to have control over everything. Something that I've done probably over the last 12 years or so is when it comes to our international travels, especially, I hand it all off to you. Like I don't need to know the who, what, when, where, and how until it's happening. And when it comes to the planning, that I would usually if I'm doing it, when I travel by myself, for example, I'll go in and I'll look for hotels, but I'll specifically research ones that are have a lot of safety elements to them. And so something like that, when it comes to travel, I've completely let go of that, and I have let you do everything. And then it's not until it's time to go to where I'm like, okay, what's the plan?
Here's all the plans, the tactical plans laid out throughout, and to where now you can focus on what you need to as we progress through.
Something else that I do is I try to schedule these mindless times on purpose. So you could give your brain a break by doing something like watching a TV show, reading if you want to. You can take a walk. You can, for me, going outside and hanging out with the horse, or listening to the chickens scream at me. Like there are a lot of things that you can do to where with deliberation, you're telling yourself, okay, I'm going to do this on purpose and not worry about anything else.
Yeah, having that mental break time is important, because it lets almost your mind reset and be able to like edge yourself into the next scenario.
And also, I think too that something that has helped a lot when it comes to our home in particular is creating a safe space. So we have cameras all over the place. We have firearms accessible all over the place. I have things that in my mind are weapons all over the place. Like I've already gone through all of the scenarios so many times throughout the 10 years that we've lived here. And it makes me feel a lot more comfortable, not only inside and outside, right? Like even when I've gone outside and I'm by myself with the horse, like our property is wide open, and that's because we like the wildlife to come in. But like a pitchfork is a weapon for me, you know? So like having that mindset of like knowing where all of the things are if I need them, that has definitely helped creating that safe space in your home environment where you spend a majority of your time.
Yeah, and it's being able to look at those different avenues and know what's accessible to you at any given time, because no one's going to know your property, your household, the situations like you would, especially in your own home environment.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.